Let's rock and roll. Welcome back to the We Are CC podcast. Thank you everyone again for joining us for episode 17. We didn't come up with a witty name, so let's call it the LUNA Meltdown. I'm Tom Crown, the most crowned to earth analyst on YouTube. I'm joined by the guy responsible for that awful pun, Mr. Poppy. He just can't help himself. He's really big on proper punctuation. And our other friend, who hopefully isn't as bad at puns, who will be asking the other day whether a friend without hair should buy into Bitcoin at this price. And Poppy told him that's a bald move. As always, you can find our previous episodes on weareccpodcast.buzzsprout.com, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere podcasts are found. That's right. Poppy, I think we're doing something a little different today. So you want to kick us off here?
Yes, sir. So for anyone that has been trading in the past couple weeks or investing or just around crypto, you probably noticed a certain top 10 protocol had a little bit of a meltdown. I think a meltdown is probably an understatement. Tom, what would you call it at this point?
Rug pull.
It feels like that. I mean, Mr. in the DeFi side, have you ever seen something go from, what was it, around 100? We'll even say, we'll be generous. We can say $80, but like a week and a half ago to, was it like 0.00001, 2 or 3 cents?
I mean, in terms of the speed and magnitude of the collapse, I mean, kind of. We've seen algo stablecoins depeg and spectacularly fail and implode many times before, actually. But, this is the first time something of this market cap. So, yeah, it was at like $80, but I think it was north of 100 just like a couple of weeks even before that. So like 3-4 weeks ago, maybe 5 weeks ago, it hit its all-time high, I believe. I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me. But to see that kind of market cap get wiped out in the time it did is pretty spectacular. It's pretty amazing to watch. Not that it's a good thing or it's enjoyable. It's just super intriguing, right? But what was interesting was the resiliency of UST, right? Because all these other algo stablecoins, once you hit a certain threshold, the peg straight breaks and it's just straight down from there. But what we saw with UST and Luna was it was fighting for the peg for a good week or so, right? And I think that's super interesting. And I think it does speak to the learning that has happened in the algo stablecoin space over all these, well, I was going to say years, but really we're talking months, right? And that just speaks to the pace of innovation happening in DeFi. But, every time we see one of these, it is really interesting to see what learnings come out of it, because we did see this peg bend instead of break, right? And eventually it was just too much bending, and at some point, even, the bendiest straw is going to break. Maybe the bendiest branch is going to break, right? So, I think it's interesting because it does show that there are, the internalization of all these learnings that have happened over all this time. But man, what a wild week it's been. Whether it's you're a Luna holder or UST user or, a BTC or ETH holder, it's been a hell of a week, man.
Yeah, I love the idea. I love the idea of an algo, preferably decentralized. I love the idea of an algo-backed stablecoin if it was decentralized. But this kind of whole event makes me question: are we there yet? I know that maybe this wasn't, decentralized in that sense, but what can be done? Because it does appear to me, and I'm no expert, you guys both probably more expert than I am on DeFi. What can really be done if stablecoins, there's a path to having this happen to almost any kind of, representation of an algo-backed stablecoin? Man, that was a mouthful. Like this attack vector that was taken, or, maybe not, but, isn't this maybe a flaw of the algo-backed stablecoin? Or, I'd like to hear your guys' opinions, because I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a flaw in the algo because I think the resiliency of the peg trying to regain itself, right, trying to retake that $1 position is very. It speaks to the algorithm actually kind of working, right? But for me, what the learning of this is, and I know I say this a lot, guys, but again, it just for me it comes down to, and the reason why I never picked up any Luna or UST myself. Um, um, is the sustainability, right? It is that it's the ability to sustain that growth, and I think that growth just happened too quickly, right? They exposed themselves to multiple attack vectors on economic attack vectors, right? They expanded to so many centralized exchanges. They were so deeply subsidizing the yield on Anchor, and really, everybody was in it just that the greed that was out there in order to just kind of earn your 20% on stables or loop and leverage and loop and continue to loop and continue to leverage to just pump up that yield even higher. It just all came together to just represent, I think, too good of an opportunity for economic attackers, economic bad actors there. And from that, I think it just takes me back to sustainable growth, man. It has to make sense, dollars and cents at the end of the day, because if all you're relying on, which it turned out to be the case here, is for incoming demand on Luna to support the peg, it comes down to Ponzi-nomics, right? And really, you can't just have that inflow without balancing the system and having, a healthy amount of lending happening on Anchor, having sufficient liquidity, whether on decentralized pools or even on sexes on centralized exchanges. So it's so complicated, man. It was so many different factors, I think, that just kind of came down to the collapse. But I don't know if it's the algo itself.
Maybe we can let's step back for just a second. Let's kind of recap the past week, and then this will actually feed into what we saw with Luna. It's all kind of one vicious cycle anyways, right? The market tanked, Luna tanked, and I think those two events had a lot of causation and correlation. So if we're talking about Bitcoin, last time we were here doing the podcast, I think we were in the lower 30s, and in the week since, is it fair? I believe it's very fair. But if you guys disagree, I believe it's fair to say that we had a genuine capitulation event in the past week. Does that sound fair to you guys?
I mean, I hope so. Look at the total market cap. We really, really dropped on total market cap. And of course, we can explain some of that because UST and Luna were both close to the top 10, if not in the top 10. And that's like by themselves billions of dollars. I hope we're capitulated. I hope all the weekends are out and we're bottomed. But today is not a super exciting day. I had some high hopes for Monday here on this open, and we're just kind of chilling at the same price that we ended Friday last week at.
Yeah, which is actually, I think that's a good thing. I think that's showing the strength of Bitcoin right now, despite our retrace from all-time highs. It's really good to see it holding up, and let's not forget that the price action was exacerbated. It was made worse by the fact that the Luna Foundation Guard, right, the nonprofit organization that kind of is chartered to help maintain the Luna ecosystem, it injected its Bitcoin reserves, the liquidity from its Bitcoin reserves, to try to save the peg. So not only did we see, organic downward, sell pressure on Bitcoin, but at the time we were seeing organic sell pressure due to markets or whatever. We had almost a $1.5 billion unwinding of a Bitcoin position from the LFG, and that was just kind of the kicker on top of all the negative sentiment that was already out there. So despite all that, nice little recovery, right? I think we dipped down into the high 20s. So I think that's a positive sign.
Yeah, and you were talking about market cap, Tom. So since November, and this is always a good reminder, November is when the U.S. Fed Not to say that the U.S. is the only country that matters, but it is extremely important when it comes to speculative markets. The Fed announced, hey, we're going to start tapering. We're going to start drawing back the amount of money we're injecting into the system. We're going to start looking at raising rates, which is what, now we know many months later, a lot of pain has come out of that decision. And basically from that day, all markets have been dropping. And in that time, the market cap, I think for crypto, we were around $3 trillion, if I'm reading this chart right, which is phenomenal.
We hit 3. I think we hit just at 3.
Yeah, right around 3. And if you're looking since that time, we've shed about 64% of the market cap in crypto. Since the Luna Foundation meltdown, we've shed about 30% from where we were. So we're sitting right now around 1.2 trillion. So that's a lot. And I think, for someone that's been around for a while, Tom, you probably would describe that as, kind of trimming the fat, trimming a lot of the, pardon the language, a lot of the shit coins, a lot of the dead weight in the market, right?
Yeah, I mean, and reasonably, if you look at the history of total market cap, we did go a little lower on May 12th than we had last year, but not much lower. And he said something about capitulation, and I was thinking as you guys were talking, the Luna Guard really did capitulate. Like they sold, they folded, and that was a large player, that was a large holder at the time. So hopefully the broader market capitulated, but at least the Luna Guard, whatever, they did, and it didn't take the market that much lower than last year. That's what I was really hoping for today, to kind of open strong into the week and see us move at least back to Aprilish area, near to 2 trillion. Instead, we're kind of just hanging out, but we haven't gone lower than the 12th, so staying optimistic, I guess.
Yeah, if I had to speculate, and there's a lot of speculation out there, no one's going to have a complete answer for you. Was it an attack on Luna? Was it not? What about the other stable coins that we're seeing their peg, a little weaker, but they held up? If you look at the order books, basically where people have orders in waiting to buy Bitcoin, you can see that there's a floor. A lot of bids starting to queue up between 30K and 20K, which kind of makes sense given where we are. Last year, when we had that dip down in May, I think it was around 30K where you saw a really strong band of bids waiting. And so when we dipped down to 25K, not a lot of people I think we're talking about this, but the major funds, when we say major funds, we mean like ETFs or trusts or funds like Grayscale, those kind of players that have billions and billions of dollars. Those guys grew their Bitcoin holdings by 7% on the day we hit 25K. And so I think, big money was extremely happy to step in there. I don't know that means 25K is going to be the end of it, but I kind of get the impression, like you were saying, Tom, I kind of feel maybe it's a little bit of my gut feeling, a little bit of looking at the chart itself and the on-chain, but I kind of feel like if we're not at the bottom, we're very close.
Yeah, it would be awesome. Nobody knows. That's the real answer that everyone out there needs to hear is, there's going to be a million people who are going to say they know, where the bottom is, if it's in, if it's not. And nobody ever knows. I don't know. You don't know. Everyone's just guessing, and someone will be correct, and then they'll say they knew, and that's how that whole dance goes. Something I pointed out actually 2 days ago on my YouTube channel, Tom Crown, was that there's an interesting dynamic going on with Bitcoin's price specifically. If you look at it in almost any other currency pair, it didn't break last year's low. Bitcoin USD did. But if you look at GBP, you look at Euro, they didn't. And that does make sense that, the dollar really has been ripping and these other currencies have been taking some beatings. It's just an interesting way to look at the chart. I have it pulled up right in front of me. BTC GBP touched about 20,800, where last year went down to exactly 20,000. So there's a little bit of perspective there. It's like, is Bitcoin is it really lost value since last year in May? Or are the lenses we're looking at it through different? Is the dollar just really strong right now? it's all speculative, but I think it's worth thinking about at least.
I think that's a fair point. Even last year, I remember people were talking, and I believe you agree with me on this. I think probably most analysts, not all, most analysts will say, hey, after somewhere between February to April timeframe is when we really entered bear market. Psychologically, sentiment wise, most traders left the market at that point. So the fact that it made a new all-time high after that, a lot of people were talking about, well, maybe it's due to the inflation. Maybe it's due to some of these other factors. Maybe it's not, necessarily a genuine new high. It just appears to be a new high because the value of the dollar has changed relative to the last time it was at this level. And I think that's what you're saying, right, Tom?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, but if you look at the BTC UST pair, we hit all kinds of all-time highs.
I knew it. I knew it was going
too
to
early.
$500,000. I called it. Oh, I tweeted about that today. Bitcoin hit $500,000 on the UST pair. I think from now on, I'm only going to look at Bitcoin UST. It makes my day brighter.
So I know a lot of people, speaking of these really wild charts, a lot of people, one, were shorting either UST or Luna. Kind of weird that people were shorting a stable coin, but it was happening. But also a lot of people were buying Luna. Whether or not that remains to be a good decision, we'll see in the coming days, weeks, months. I'm one of them. I picked up like $200. I think, Tom, did you get some too?
Yeah, I bought a really small amount, but I fully expect that to be worth zero. Isn't that how this works? Isn't it just going to mint like unlimited Luna? And so like it really just can't get back to where it was unless I think they're talking about a fork, right? Or something, or they burn all of it, or I don't see much hope for this long.
Yeah, well that's a
Well, no, I think that's it right there, Tom. Is the fork is kind of that rescue plan, right? And there is a lot of value in the Luna ecosystem, the builders, the projects, right? And just the economy itself, I think, is strong. Now, I think the question is, can the sentiment can that recover? With a fork where they turn the existing Luna token into Luna Classic and the new chain becomes Luna without a UST. Now, is there enough value in that ecosystem, and can it be backed up with enough positive sentiment, enough belief that it can work again for it to work? I think it really comes down to that, right? And I'm with you, Tom. It's hard to say right now.
Like the Luna Classic. I wonder where they got that idea from. So let's kind of recap some, because this really was a wild event in terms of capitulation. There's certainly been some big events, some big milestones, scary times in crypto over the past decade. This is definitely going to rank up there. I would believe in like the top 5. That day. The fear was extremely tangible even for like hardened vets that are cool as cucumbers like Tom Crown.
Oh, I wasn't
probably,
but well, the thing I think what really happened is like there's a lot. We talk about FUD in this space, and so UST started to depeg, and we've all heard the Tether FUD for 4 years now, going on 5 maybe, and I think a lot of people reasonably saw UST and thought USDT, and I think there was even some confusion there. We saw USDT sell off, which isn't the same kind of stablecoin. Not algorithm backed. It's asset backed, and so it had no reason to depeg. But I think people were just that confused. I think that we certainly hit a historic point of FUD. Let's say.
Mm-hmm. I saw it on Twitter a lot. I saw a lot of people mistyping UST versus USDT. I saw other people that just outright confused. They thought the T meant Tether. It really, really was a lot of fear in the market around stable coins. But it's good. This is a good opportunity to educate. I would say, not financial advice, but the top 3 that I trust, and probably in this order, I'm curious what you guys think. One is USDC, which I believe is backed by, is that Circle and Coinbase are the two big proponents of that?
I think yeah.
Circle, yep, USDC.
And then DAI, to me, it's a decentralized one that has a proven track record. That's been through a couple cycles. It's been tested. It works. That also has held up well. Third would be Tether. Tether, honestly, I know there's a lot of FUD around it, but it's been around. I know they're working to improve their reputation a little bit, and there's probably some truth to the FUD. But if they didn't depeg this past week, then I think it's going to take a whole heck of a lot more to see that happen. I mean, what do you guys
been waiting? The whole space has been waiting for Tether to break since it started, and it hasn't. And I'll say, maybe incorrectly, but very outspoken when Tether started. I was like, this seems like a terrible idea. But they proved me wrong, at least so far. Everybody is betting, everyone has bet against it since it started. Kind of weirdly like a Bitcoin story in that sense, but it's still here. USDC is absolutely my preferred stablecoin. If I have an option, I'm taking USDC. It's a good list. I would take DAI if I couldn't get USDC, but there's a few kind of lesser known ones that I would take as well, like GUSD that's backed by Gemini. Really, any US exchange that has a stable coin right now, these people are being watched under a microscope. And so I have more confidence in them. Of course, I'd rather just have dollars if I could, but.
Yeah, and let's not forget Frax is out there. Frax was partnered up pretty heavy with UST and Luna. And I think, as far as education is concerned, let's make sure everybody is aware, right? Like, there are different kinds of stable coins where we're seeing the depegs of these, UST, and before that it was Titan, and the list goes on, but those are pure algo stable coins, right? And then you have kind of the middle ground where you have fractional reserve algo stable coins that rely on algorithms to keep the peg, but they do have part of their market cap, essentially, their circulating supply, backed by hard assets, well, quote unquote hard assets, right? And then you have pure collateralized stable coins. So you have pure algo stable coins like UST. You have these fractional reserve algo stables like Frax, and then you have fully, quote unquote, fully backed, reserve backed stable coins like USDT and USDC, right? And so I think that kind of goes down the risk spectrum from highest risk on algos right now to Frax, and I'm actually keeping an eye on Frax. I think Frax has an opportunity to shine now if they can get beyond the algo stablecoin sentiment. But really, what I keep in my wallet is DAI and USDC. So
that's a good segue. I want to just recap a few of the interesting things about what happened this past week. Then I want to talk just for a minute about a specific stablecoin, a newer one. But to highlight, this past week was really an incredible stress test. There's a lot of the ecosystem, especially if you're not in DeFi, you may not realize how interconnected all of the different services, protocols, projects, exchanges, they're all kind of interconnected, right? If you ever sit there and wonder how the price remains similar across all of these services, well, that's because people are arbitraging, people are trading across them, people are doing things. So when you have a big collapse like Luna, it's a top 10 project. It's billions of dollars that suddenly flush through the system faster than the system can accommodate, which is why UST depegged. So I saw so many crazy stories. I mean, we don't have time to get into all of them, right? But there was one, just starting with the big boys, Binance. At peak, Binance had $1.6 billion worth of Luna. Do you guys, I could let you guys guess how much that's worth now?
About tree fitty.
$5.
Yeah.
From $1.6 billion to $3,000. It's
quite an L.
That's just,
that blows my mind, man. Might as well be zero.
And my heart goes out to everybody out there that, believed in Luna and believed in the project, because I've been in the space a long time, and I have the opinion, I lean towards the maximalism. I do have lots of alts, but I lean towards it because there's so much uncertainty in all these new projects, and they all promise the moon, and it's believable. And my heart goes out because there's people out there that, this was their Bitcoin for me, and I can sympathize with that. As they could have lost all of what they invested, basically. I mean, it went down 99.999% or something. Like, I don't even know what to say to them. It's like, you need to diversify, but it's too soon. It's too soon.
Yeah. Well, there's also, the case to be made for don't over allocate, don't over leverage yourself into one single asset, which we're seeing a lot of stories of, right? And that really, I think for me, speaks to just the greed out there. Not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying in terms of fear and greed, in terms of market, right, activity. We were seeing that. And again, whenever you're investing in anything that isn't a blue chip, make sure that you're playing with money that you don't need to survive, and make sure that you understand the tokenomics. If not, at least at the outset, really make sure that folks that you trust are backing it. And maybe it's time to stop trusting some folks. Maybe it's time to start tuning into Mr. Tom Crown's channel.
Hello. Nice plug.
There you go.
Yeah, and they always say that Bitcoin maxis are made in bear markets, and and I can absolutely understand why. I will say that this shouldn't scare you from investing in altcoins or even using stables, but you really need to do it smartly.
I think it's definitely an example of like you need to look at what you're doing. I mean, they talk about diversification of investments like in the Bible. Like this is not new information, and I'm not trying to be hard on people, but like it's important. Yeah, it really is. You think about how much you can gain, but we all need to pull ourselves back and slow ourselves down. Get rich quick is not a sustainable system. If people are getting rich quick, something has to break. Right. And that also kind of brings me full circle. Is I wonder who made money. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you, but like I wonder who made money on this, because someone made money somewhere on this whole Luna UST dump thing. I wonder who it was.
Oh man, there are so many theories out there, right? Yeah. But the big boys for sure made money either arbing it, or if you believe some of the conspiracy theories out there, then they definitely made a pretty penny attacking UST.
Well, and I also think as retail saw this kind of capitulation hitting, a lot of people started to short Luna. And so I think when they were trying to burn Luna to bring the UST back to peg, they were also fighting against all that selling pressure from the shorts. I mean, it feels like it was just an unwinnable combination. The whole market was no matter what, fighting them.
Someone's making, there's two hands on a trade to shake hands. Mm-hmm. You need two hands, and someone made money proportionate to all the money lost.
Well, guaranteed market makers made money. Guaranteed exchanges made money.
Though, I mean, exchanges, absolutely. Market makers, though, that dump was very, very violent. And that's not the best conditions for market makers. I've spoken to some in person. They really like kind of stable sideways trading. So that they might have lost money on that, which is probably a rare situation.
Oh, Binance certainly did. So a couple real quick small things, and then we'll move into this next one. One, amateur mistakes, but things maybe you didn't think about at the time. One project had hard-coded UST's value into their smart contract at $1. So obviously that led to a whole host of arbitrage opportunities when it wasn't $1. Another thing that happened was Chainlink.
Infinite sell cycle.
Yeah, exactly. Chainlink, who's the main oracle across the DeFi space, they provide, like, for example, they provide price data across all these different apps and services and exchanges, right? They had suspended price updates at a certain point, which led to another set of issues where some services were priced incorrectly. Again, more arbitrage opportunities. So even in this crisis event, though, there are, like you guys were just saying, there's a ton of ways to profit, but they're also probably extremely risky. So we were going to jump to the newest decentralized algorithmic stablecoin. It's probably worth talking about because I think a lot of people, if they're looking, again, market's kind of scary. If they're looking to go somewhere stables, they may be lured in by this. So let's just talk about it for a minute. Justin Sun and Tron. Tron's been around for a while. He has a new one called USDD. I think it's just like US decentralized dollar or US dollar decentralized. It's extremely similar. In fact, it's basically the same mechanism, except instead of burning Luna, you're burning Tron.
Oh my!
So
that was my first question, man. That was my first question. I didn't get into any of this DeFi stuff. I dabbled in like CeFi, and it's because I don't understand. I don't, I probably know more than, guy on the street.
Yeah, well, in the timing, I mean, we're not. It's not conspiracy theory. I actually don't think he had anything to do with it. But the timing really is so bizarre because he launched his stable coin just 1 week. UST collapsed less than a week after he launched his on Tron. So I guess in one way it's beneficial for him. But
it just goes to show that there's just so much. There's someone new, and not just someone. I would say maybe people even just listening right now or listening in the future could have looked into this and said, "Hey, there's a point that can be forced that this will collapse." And so this was not a surprise to some people. And Justin Tron is just a wild card, I guess. I don't know what he's doing. It seems a little maybe ill-advised.
Yeah, he is. I think a wild card's a fair point. He's also, isn't he basically one of those guys that's like secretly one of the richest in crypto?
I'm sure.
He has a ton of money to throw around. And doesn't Tron also, isn't that the backbone on which is it USDT? Is it Tether or USD? Tether. So Tether operates on Tron, right? So
of course it's multi-chain, but I personally don't. I think if you're sending USDT around on the Ethereum chain, you're shooting yourself in the foot. TRC20 is definitely the way to go. I hope I don't regret saying this, but I have used specifically TRC20 to send USDT for a long time now because it's basically instant and no fee versus Ethereum where you might be paying upwards of $100 just to send something. That I feel like people are really sleeping on that. And I wanted to kind of be, I don't want to say pro Tron, but yeah, I had kind of hopes for Tron because I found so much value and so much use for it recently. And I'm not shilling it, especially not shilling it because if they're going to go down the path of Luna, that just seems like madness. And it seems like it's probably going to end the same way. I don't know what Justin's thinking.
It is. I mean, Tron, for those who don't know, is basically in one of the older Ethereum competitors or Ethereum killers or whatever you want to call it. But it's been around. It has some pedigree. Justin Sun's well connected within the space. So I don't think Tron's going anywhere, but he is obviously playing this game with the algo stable coins. If you're going to go into it, just do yourself a favor. Don't put all your stables and all your money into that one stable coin. Do like I do. I split it up. I usually split between Tether and USDC just because I feel a little bit more comfortable that way. And I might have a little bit, I play with and die or something else. But I never sit all 100% in one stable coin just in case.
Yeah, same. You should look into GUSD from Gemini. That probably is my largest stablecoin holding. Gemini has been a pillar of this space, whether people like them or not. They've been around forever. And they aren't going, I again, knock on wood, they're not going to make an algorithmic backed stablecoin like Do Kwon. They really have to cross their T's and dot their I's. They're very much under the microscope. So I hope I don't live to regret that, but I have quite a penny in the GUSD and haven't had an issue yet. Although I don't really move it around or anything. It just sits there. So
you did bring up a point I hadn't thought about originally, which is, I would trust the centralized exchanges that have a U.S. footprint, just because the U.S. regulators are actually pretty darn strict and a pain in our butts.
They want to catch them. They want a gotcha moment, and because they haven't gotten it, they're absolutely going to jump on this UST thing for their gotcha moment. We told you this wouldn't work. Now like Bitcoin's going to go to zero because UST. When you're going to hear these arguments coming out, they're absolutely going to, in the same way they do with anything. I actually saw my mom, who's 66 or something, and she goes, "Oh, Bitcoin's been in the news again lately. This is down all this and blah blah blah." It's like, I bet the next thing that gets fed to them is this UST shenanigan, and it will be used to paint the entire space as unreliable or not backed, whatever it is. It's like the ultimate FUD.
Yeah, it was only the next day or two after that meltdown started that the Janet Yellen, again, the U.S. government, we're talking U.S. government, right? But basically half of Congress, half of the U.S. government was talking on live TV about stablecoins specifically and about the meltdown of stablecoins, which was kind of wild to see. Because I think before this, it was, of course, it was mentioned, it was discussed, but rarely. In this case, it was all over the news. All the different politicians were hammering her with questions about, what are you guys going to do? We need to, do we need to regulate this or fix this somehow? So something's going to come out of this. Probably regulation we're not going to like, but I'm sure it's coming.
It's like the scapegoat. It's the fall. Mm-hmm. I think it's all just going to be FUD, though. UST is not crypto. It was certainly centralized to some degree, and I'm not aware of what degree. But it's not Bitcoin. It's not the space, and we're going to see that paintbrush just paint the whole thing as this is all a Ponzi. This is how Bitcoin operates. It operates the same way. They won't say that, but they don't know what they're talking about, so they're going to use weird language that kind of implies it and like leans towards it. It really did strike me, though, that I love her, but my boomer mother brought it up to me a day or 2 days ago. And I was like, man, that we just hit like 25K and now my mom's bringing it up. Like that's kind of like when she brought it up at 69K. Like it's.
Yeah. Bottom signal, maybe.
Hopefully.
In a perfect world. Like you said, no one knows for sure, but boy, if this isn't the bottom, I don't know. Feels like it. Close.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Fingers crossed means trade safely, slowly, dollar cost average in. So for a final note, I did want to say that we mentioned this just before the podcast. Do Kwon, the head of LUNA or the LUNA Guard, he published a proposal to fork the protocol. You can actually Google it. You could probably find it pretty quick. Basically, they were going to fork the chain. They were going to also, part of this was to compensate the smaller bag holders. So there was some discussion on the Luna forums where someone did some quick math and said, hey, if you exclude the whales, you could fairly compensate like 90 something % of UST investors. Now, that doesn't fix Luna token itself, right? But for those that were in the stablecoin, you could, because the whales, the top 100 addresses on Anchor, they had over 92% of the funds. So you don't actually need nearly as much money to compensate people. So if you're really stressing this, you had a big UST position, hang on, there may be a remedy for that. As far as Luna, you're probably going to want to drop into the Terra forums and follow that thread. We talked about it. They're talking about making the legacy chain Luna Classic, making a new one. And I'm sure it's going to be very similar design, but there's still a lot of questions about how much Luna can actually recover even with a fork. I don't expect it's going to see $100 anytime soon, unless they have a dramatic change in, maybe in the total supply or something.
Yeah, I think the forking is really their only option at this point. There's just too many people, I think, now have bought at fractions of a penny, and the amount of sell. Can you imagine if it went back to $1 or something? Like the amount of people who would be selling there, so wherever, even maybe a cent, would be huge, probably billions of dollars. Like I think you could have bought a million Luna for $100 in the last few days. It's going to be difficult to sell that at $1.
I don't think the fork is probably the only realistic possibility to salvage Luna. It really comes down to the community, and I feel for everyone, really. Like we said earlier, we've all had some bad luck, some missteps, some hard lessons learned, or just some things that are just unfair in the space. It's a new and somewhat lightly, or sometimes not at all, regulated space, and so there's just a lot of risk there. As I like to say, we take on this risk though because the traditional, economic system has failed us, because it's forcing us farther out that risk curve to try and make a better quality of life for ourselves. And if the traditional systems were more fair, we might not be chasing these meme coins, these shit coins, these high risk algo stable coins. Maybe we would be just invested with our bank, but the bank isn't cutting it. So, especially with this inflation. So I think this is a special episode. I think we are going to move to the wrap up portion. We unfortunately is a little bit shorter than normal, only a little bit. But we will move to some Q&A. We can stop recording now, Tom.